Hi SILEM stars, you're welcome back to the channel. If you're new here and you're not part of the SILEM stars, please join the SILEM stars by hitting the subscribe button down below. It's absolutely free and it helps the channel grow. It also helps the SILEM stars family grow as well. In today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a 3-part corset with a basque waistline from start to finish. I already drafted the pattern for this tutorial in my previous video, so be sure to check that out. But in this video, I'm going to take you guys through the entire stitching process. It's very detailed and easy to understand. Remember that I also have other corset tutorials on the channel. I have Victorian corset tutorial, overbust corset, 2-part corset, underbust corset, all of that. Corset with ready-made breast cups as well. Check out all those videos in my corset tutorials playlist. The link to that playlist will be in the description box down below. It's also going to be in the pinned comments down below as well. So without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
So these are the different pieces. I use my pattern paper to cut these different pieces. This is my main fabric. I'm using an ashoke fabric. Because of the structure that the ashoke fabric already has, I didn't use any interfacing with it. But for my lining, I'm using a cotton lining, and I also went ahead to use a paper stay as the interfacing for the lining. And then when I cut the pieces, I left 1/2 inch all around. Now for my cups, I used this breast pad here to cut my cups, the 3 pieces for my cups. I also cut the cups on the lining and on the fabric. Now for the front piece, I went ahead to just place the side front, right side facing with the center front, and then I pinned it. I did the same thing for the other side as well. I'm also going to go ahead and just sew along that line with 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. To sew the cups, I'm starting with the bottom 2. I'm going to sew the bottom 2 together, right sides facing with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to place the top parts on top of the bottom ones and then sew them as well. So first of all, as you can see, I'm joining the bottom pieces of the cup together with 1/2 inch seam allowance, right sides facing. Now that I'm done with that, this is what we have. I'm also going to go ahead and just open that allowance, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold the top one just to get the center point or the midpoint. I just went ahead to create a notch at that point, and then I'm placing it right sides facing, making sure that the midpoint of the top one aligns with that the seam of the bottom one. Then I'm going to go ahead and sew from that midpoint to one end and from the midpoint to the other end. Make sure that when you're sewing this, you open up your seam. And this is what we have once we've done that. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other cup as well. Now for my breast pads, I'm going to join both of them to the bottom pieces together using a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to make sure that they are placed side by side, not right sides facing but side by side. And as you can see, there's no allowance because I'm not sewing them right sides facing. If you don't have a sewing machine with a zigzag stitch, you can hand sew this together side by side. And now for the top part of the breast pad, I'm also folding it just the same way I did with my fabric, and I'm just marking that midpoint. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that midpoint aligns with the seam of the bottom one, or the seam that connects the 2 bottom pieces together. I'm also going to go ahead and join it with a zigzag stitch as well. As you join it with your zigzag stitch, make sure that you pull them close to each other so that the thread catches both pieces and they are glued together, or they are stuck together when you're done sewing it. I hope that makes sense. And this is what it looks like once we're done. So you can see our breast pad is already formed. And this is how to create your own breast cup very easily. Now for my back pieces, I also went ahead to cut them with half of an inch seam allowance all the way around. If you notice, I didn't use any interfacing on my main fabric because I'm using an ashoke fabric that has structure already. So I'm going to place the side back and center back pieces right sides facing, and I'm going to join them with half of an inch seam allowance. I did that for both back pieces. Now going back to my breast cup, you want to go ahead and just open up all the seam allowances and then iron them flat, which is what I've already done. You can use a tailor's ham to do this to make it much easier. I have a tutorial on how to make a tailor's ham, very easy without sewing. I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description box and in the card up above. So now I'm going to place my breast cup, the main fabric on top of my breast cup that I've made. And as you can see, it's the same size with my breast cup, but I want to trim it a bit more so that it's not the same size with the fabric basically. So just trim it all the way around, trim your breast cup around so that it's smaller than your actual fabric cup. So as you can see, I had trimmed one first and I used that one to trim the second one so that they are equal. When I place it, can you see how it is now? Ideally, what you should aim for is make sure that you have at least ½ inch all the way around. Now for my lining, I'm gonna have to just draw my style lines where I'm going to insert my boning channels, which I've already done. If you want your boning channels to be on the main fabric, you can go ahead and insert your boning channels on the main fabric and not on the lining. But because I don't want mine to be visible in front, that's why I inserted the boning channels on the lining and not on the main fabric. Now because I want to have an opening at the back, because I'm going to be using loops, I went ahead to just trim out about 1.5 inches from the center back. I also did the same thing, trim that off from my main fabric as well. If you're using a zipper, you don't have to trim. You can just go ahead and just use the piece like that, and then obviously insert your zipper. So as you can see, I've gone ahead to insert my boning channels on the back pieces as well. As you can see, for the main back piece, there's no boning channel on it because, like I said, I want mine to be invisible. Now for my cup, I'm just going to go ahead and just tack the breast cup on my fabric cup just at different points. So like I mentioned, you can actually trim your cup, your main breast cup, so that it's just about 1/4 inch or ½ an inch less than your main fabric. That way, especially if it's 1/4 inch, you can go ahead and just sew your cup around. You don't have to tack it, okay? So if that's what you prefer, please do that. So once you have that done, all you have to do is just go ahead and just place the midpoint of your breast cup on that seam of your front piece, and then just sew from the midpoint to one end and from the midpoint to the other end. Make sure that when you're placing your cup, the part that you labeled CC, which is center cup, aligns with the middle part of your front piece. I hope that makes sense, guys. So the middle part of your front piece is the one right there at the center. So make sure that the cup that's labeled CC aligns with that middle part of your cup, of your bodice, and the part labeled SC aligns with the side of your bodice. So the same way you fixed your cup for the fabric, go ahead and fix the cup as well for the lining, just the same way. Make sure that the midpoint of the cup matches with the seam of your bodice, and then go ahead and sew from the midpoint to one end and the midpoint to the other end as well. For the back piece, I'm just going to go ahead and just place them right sides facing the fabric and the lining, and then sew that with ½ of an inch seam allowance, open it, top stitch, and then sew the sides. I've gone ahead to also insert my loops. If you want to know how to create loops for your corset and insert them, I'm going to leave the tutorial to that video in the description box and in the card above. So be sure to check it out so you know how I created those loops and how I inserted them. So as you can see, I joined the lining and the fabric at the top with ½ of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm opening it up, top stitching, making sure that the allowance is facing the lining side and not the fabric. And then I'm going to go ahead and top stitch along that fabric, along the lining rather. Now I'm going to close it back up and then I'm going to go ahead and sew the sides closed. And when I've turned out to the right side, this is what it looks like. So you can see, very neat, very neat. I did the same thing for the other back piece as well. Now for the front piece, I'm just placing the lining on the fabric right sides facing. And I'm going to go ahead and just join both of them at the top with 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I'm done with that, I'm going to open it up and then top stitch and then close it back and then sew the sides closed, just the same way I did the lining. So as you can see, I'm joining it first of all at the top with 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's important that you pin it all the way so that it's easier for you to, handle while you're sewing. So just go ahead and pin it before you sew, and then as you're sewing, you can be taking out the pins as you go along. Now I'm opening it up, and then I'm making sure that the allowance is facing the lining side and not the fabric. Then I'm going to go ahead and just top stitch. Now you can actually create notches all along that allowance before you top stitch. That's also good as well. That's actually recommended, but I didn't do it in mine, but you can definitely do that, okay? What this will do is that it's going to make the that top area lay flat, and your lining is not going to come out to the front side. You don't want your lining to be showing at the front. So once I've top stitched it, I'm just going to go ahead and just close it back, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew the sides closed. And this is what we have once we've sewn it. I'm going to go ahead and just turn it to the right side now. And this is what the back looks like as well. See how neat it is, guys. Now I'm going to go ahead and just round out the tip of my boning. Make sure you do that. Just trim it and make it rounded so that it's not too sharp. Okay, and it doesn't make the client or whoever is wearing the dress uncomfortable. Then once you have that, just go ahead and just insert your boning, and then you want to trim it. The length should be 1/2 inch less than the length of that particular boning channel that you're inserting the boning to. Okay, so make sure it's 1/2 inch less, and then you also want to go ahead and just round out the edge of the boning at the bottom as well. Make sure you do this for all of them. Once you're done, you have to go ahead and just sew the bottom part closed. I've also gone ahead to put in the boning in my back pieces as well, and then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go ahead and just sew that bottom part closed. For the front piece, I'm also going to go ahead and just sew the bottom part closed as well. Since this is a basque waistline corset, I'm going to show you guys how to attach this to your skirt, because some of you find it difficult. It could get tricky if you don't know how to do it. So I'm going to show you guys how to attach the basque waistline corset to the skirt parts of your dress. Okay, so you want to go ahead and just, like I said, sew that bottom part closed. So as you can see, the skirt piece of my dress is ready. I'm just going to go ahead and just place the back pieces of my corset on the waist of the skirt, and I'm just going to go ahead and just sew them together with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now for the front piece, I'm just going to go ahead and just make sure that the edge of my corset, the top, aligns with that waist of my skirt. Okay, then as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and just trace the basque waistline of my corset, just tracing that on the skirt, so I know the exact
place where the basque waistline falls on the skirt. Now I'm just going to go ahead and just sew along that line, okay? Once I'm done sewing it now, I'm just going to go ahead and just trim just 1/2 inch above that line that I had sewn, okay? Don't trim on that line, because if you do, it will be too big for, you know, the top. So just trim 1/2 inch above that line. Now taking my corset, placing it right sides facing with the skirt, I'm just going to go ahead and just sew from the midpoint to one end and from the midpoint to the other end. It's very, very easy. If you follow this step, you're going to have perfectly fitting basque waistline corsets without that fold. Some of you have told me that whenever you make your basque waistline corset, there's usually a fold around that basque area. If you follow this tutorial, this way I'm doing it, you're not going to have that fold on your corset, okay? So just follow it step by step. So just sew from the midpoint to one end and from the midpoint to the other end. And when you're done, this is what we have. Can you see there's no fold, guys? It's just perfectly smooth all the way. So you can just go ahead and just iron it, okay, so that it's perfectly smooth. And this is what the back piece looks like as well. So I just went ahead to just shaping it, and then I added some designs. And this is the finished look, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.